The Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series travels from Asia and back to North America to the circuit Gilles-Villeneuve. Welcome to Week 10 action for Season 9 of the series. And what a season it's been switching to the GTEs. It's been a tough one. It's been a close one. And it's been an ever-entertaining one. Welcome to Apex Racing TV. Welcome to a race where we're expecting a lot of action over 90 minutes. Our final endurance race of the season. Now, don't let the format deceive you. Some of these 90-minute events provide more drama than you would in a super sprint format. We've disposed of our super sprint format for this season, and we head into our final endurance round for our campaign. So we'll see whether or not that championship will etch closer and closer in these final 3 races. Jonathan Simon in the commentary booth, Daniel Lead alongside me, Scott Newton behind the scenes in production. Daniel, yet again we head to Montreal, a circuit that suits the aggressive driver who's aggressive on the throttle, on the brake, even on the steering, aggressive with setup. This is the venue for you.
Yeah, good evening, Jonathan, and to all the viewers tuning in. Great to have you on board. And yeah, it's a fantastic circuit for all the drivers out here. Let's just say a lot of overtaking opportunities, especially down towards the back end of the lap, and some really tricky corners that'll weed out some of the guys maybe who haven't put enough practice in throughout the week, but certainly a circuit that offers a lot of exciting races.
And I love this circuit. I've been here in the real world, and we were talking earlier, it does remind me of Albert Park. You know, when you visit Albert Park in Melbourne, this is a street circuit, essentially, is the circuit Gilles-Villeneuve. The only unfortunate thing is I couldn't drive the road car I had at the time, Daniel, over that final chicane curve because I obviously had to pay for the rental and I didn't want to abuse anything.
Yeah, well, the final corner through here, affectionately named turns 13-14, throws you out onto that famous wall of champions there, and certainly a spot in these cars, especially with how stiffly sprung they are, where we're going to see a lot of two-wheel action, the guys getting through. So partway through the race, where a few overtaking opportunities are there, we could even see potential for a few guys just touching up that wall a little bit and continuing on the great heritage of it.
And the championship standings will be up on screen. We're about to switch over to our race here for 90 minutes. It will be a short pace lap, but here are the championship standings, and it's Stephen. Here is for the Elite GTE class. This is Stephen Lattimore leading the field ahead of Craig Edwards. It's going to be tight between those two, and Justin Wallace follows closely behind in third. We'll switch over to our next Pro class. Of course, these are all the drivers with a 700 in terms of their number, and it's Dave Clements who leads the field ahead of Brett Hender. Surprised Kenneth Latter and Cody Bird have fallen down the order in this class, so let's see if they can fare with a good result today along with Pat Gallo. Then, of course, it's the amateur class, your 300s. This is all based on your I rating, of course, if you're new to the series. Lee Vandenberg has driven ever so well. He's been competing with those pro and elite drivers. And then finally, we look at the rookies, your 100 drivers. And here they are up on screen. It's Martin Crisp with, I mean, that's a comfortable advantage. I think he's actually almost sealed that championship, Daniel. He could do it today.
Yeah, he's got himself a nice 400-point gap there, and if another good race tonight, certainly going to put him in good stead to take that championship as well.
And here's your grid for today's event. How about that for Craig Edwards? He's always in the top split, and he's always dominating, isn't he? He will start from first alongside Darren Lobb in that 999 car. Lattimore, Davison follow closely behind. Now, we have some special guests this round as we cycle through the rest of the grid. Shane Van Gisbergen racing for OSR, and Justin Ruggia starting from the 8th row, of course, too. 2 drivers racing in the real world in supercars.
Yeah, great to have some real-life talent in the field, and not only is that great for the series, it's really going to spice up the action with all the drivers out here tonight, really wanting to try and beat them as best as possible.
Yeah, I mean, 2 drivers I got to meet virtually through the Supercars E-Series. Both awesome blokes. And there's our 40-car field rounded out for our top split here today. We're about to begin 90 minutes of action, like we said, for the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series. Welcome, whether you're joining us on Apex Racing TV, on any of our associated platforms, Twitch, Facebook, YouTube. We hope you enjoy the action because we go green from Montreal, and Edwards already has a comfortable advantage into turn 1.
Yeah, great jump from Edwards off the start. Looks like everyone filing down to 2 by 2 as they work their way down through turn number 2. And looks like a fantastic start for everyone. No noticeable dropout.
Through the first sector they go. Edwards now being hunted down by Darren Lobb in that Ferrari. Now remember, these are all GTEs in this field. Lobb's going to have an attempt here. Could lob it up the inside. I love a pun every now and then. And on 2 wheels was Edwards here, pushing like crazy on the opening lap. He doesn't have as comfortable as of an advantage as I would have imagined. By the way, down the back of the pack there, Van Gisbergen up 1 position past Neil Pearson.
Yeah, Van Gisbergen getting on with it pretty well. So he's jumping up ahead. Looks like we got him in I think it's Ferrari tonight. So great to see that out there. But all in all, for the guys getting away, it's been a very smooth start. Looks like Loeb trying to get down the inside into turn number 10 there. We didn't quite see that. But Craig Edwards certainly not going to have an easy run.
This is a very long run down this back straight at Montreal. And Darren Lobb he's gonna have a mammoth draft. You could just see visually how much he's creeping in here to the rear end of Edwards, who doesn't bother to defend. And alongside each other in the braking zone, Darren Lobb hadn't led this entire race until now, the end of the first lap. And technically he should lead this first lap, but Edwards is going to try and fight back with the up and under. Alongside each other as we see one car spinning in the background. Edwards will be in second. Lattimore will form up behind in third. Danny Davison fourth in the BMW. Van Gisbergen behind. Just see Ruggia battling away with Matt Morris across the first couple of corners too. But one car down the back of the pack there earlier on, Daniel. Didn't quite see if that was contact.
Yeah, didn't see who that driver was spinning there. We'll have to see if we can get a replay up later on. But up front, Darren Loeb, doing a fantastic job. We'll cut back to the replay here. Looks like Ruggia on Matt Morris. Morris getting that position retained. I think that might have been Ruggia going around in the Ferrari, is it?
No, that was Misdale.
Misdale.
But it looked like Misdale. Again, I half looked at the shot. It was hard to spot which car it was, but I felt like that was all on his own, just clipping the curb. As you can see, the gaps on the left-hand side of the screen, of course, are going to be close in these opening few laps, but brilliant to see 3 Fords in your top 5. We never see that, Daniel. There's always about 2 Fords in the entire 300 car field.
Yeah, definitely. The Fords have slowly gained a little bit of notoriety throughout the course of the season. They've been very, very quick. Just hearing we're getting a potential for a safety car as well, so we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, great to see the participation starting to pick up for the Ford there. We know how good they have been in the hands of Craig Edwards, so hopefully with a few more drivers getting on board for that, should be even more exciting out there.
Yeah, now here's a replay up on screen. I'm not sure if the drivers slowed down there. Looked like they did for a safety car. This is Chris Pellet through the hairpin. No, sorry, we're going to... Oh, this is what's happened here. Goodness me, just... Jordan Prudence in that Porsche you see spun around, but one of the Ferraris of the 696 there. That's Damon Stockton for DPR Racing. Oh my God, it's like a roadblock, Daniel.
Yeah, a little unfortunate there. They're working their way down through turn 8, 9. Very easy to get those cars caught up through there. So hopefully they'll get them back underway. Not a lot of damage there, but yeah, pretty exciting.
Safety car is out, as you can see. This is not slow motion. This is real time at the moment. The entire field is driving at quite a steady pace. Goodness, that's is this a virtual safety car, obviously, I'd assume, Daniel, at the moment?
Yeah, the guys are holding virtual, but we do have the AMF safety car forward there, just taking to the front of the grid.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I felt like, why are they going so slow? They're going to have to catch the pace car, but the pace car was the one having to catch the rest of the field. So there's Kester Mack, the pace car driver, leading the field away. And it's the first time I've seen the pace car, I think, all season, Daniel, because I've missed a couple of races, don't forget, in season 9. But it's the first time I've been in the commentary booth where we've actually seen the pace car in use. Not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I think we did have it once out there at Circuit of the Americas as well. We did have a very early safety car for that, but certainly something that hasn't been brought out much at all. Actually, the racing standards throughout the series have been absolutely fantastic. So unfortunately, we get it out a bit early, but hopefully it is the only time tonight that we will see that car out on the track.
And so good movers and shakers through the field. We talked about Van Gisbergen up one position in that number 97. Now, I don't think he's running... Is he running the right car number, I think, Daniel, by the rules? So the stewards will probably have a chat to him about that. But he'd probably need to run a car in the 900s. But who else is moving through the field? Wallace up 3 positions. Kenneth Latta up a few spots. Matt Morris doing well. Lee Vandenberg's had the worst start, down 4 positions. He's just ahead of Justin Ruggia, but the Mach 1 Esports driver of Vandenberg, who leads his championship in that amateur class, just not had the best of getaways.
No, but it's not probably the worst thing out there. Being only 5.5 minutes down on the track at the moment, it certainly gives him a lot of opportunity and time to come back up the field. We know the Mach 1 Esport cars are very, very good under long conditions, and they're really good on getting their strategy right as well. So look for Vandenberg to come back up through the field a little bit later on in the race. And the other thing, I mean, we know how quick that Ferrari is, so that'll certainly help him out as well.
All right, so this might be a good time here during the pace car period to look at the best livery, Daniel, out there in the field. This will be a tough one because I always voted for the same driver last season. I don't want to do that today.
Well, yeah, we've got a lot of guys coming out, obviously being a retro round this time out, a lot of great cars and a lot of work has gone into getting these cars out on track as they are. Looks Darren Lobb running a retro livery in similar to what we saw from Penrite this year at Sandown. So great opportunity for those guys, and the car looks absolutely fantastic on track. Mach 1 Esports also doing a bit of a throwback livery to the Coca-Cola Paul Morris days as well. So across their cars looking absolutely fantastic as well, and a really good livery sitting on that car as well. And I think we do have a couple of other special looking liveries out there as well. I'll have to drive through and see if we can find a few of them as well.
Did you like that Kyle Busch M&M's livery from NASCAR? Because it's a very popular one in iRacing.
Look, it's not a bad livery, maybe not one of my favourites, but look, it's for the guys that are actually able to do it, a lot of talented painters out there to get those cars looking as good as they.
And you yourself, I mean, you run Dan Lead Designs, and this is actually, you know what, this isn't a paid promo. I'm going to give it to you nevertheless. But you're someone who does design liveries, so if anyone wants to get in contact with you, they can do so. I assume you have a Facebook page, anywhere else, a website, of course?
Yeah, look, there is a Facebook page, Dan Lead Designs, and Instagram, so more than happy to have a chat to any of the guys out there. Facebook or iRacing as well, but not here to talk about me as much as I appreciate the kind words. But no, look, for the guys that are out there, absolutely fantastic. This event too, helped sponsored in part too by Night Rider Designs as well, so they've come on board to help with this event and the running of the Retro Enduro round as well. So a big shout out to the guys at Night Rider Designs for helping with this one also.
Well, Alex Simpson from Apex Racing TV just messaged me saying he was going to invoice you for that. No, I'm just joking, mate. It's all in good fun here for Daniel Leet. But definitely check him out. Does a brilliant job with livery designs. Got to keep him busy. And the safety car is in, though, this lap round. And Darren Lobb in the Ferrari will slow down. He's going to essentially become the pace car, isn't he, Daniel? And I think he'd have to probably, once you exit, I think, from the final corner, that would be the right time to floor it.
Yeah, I think he's going to want to back up the field as much as possible. And you're right, if he can get the run out of 13 and 14 onto the front straight, he's really going to be able to open up a good gap. But it's all about Craig Edwards behind, anticipating when that jump's going to be and trying to mirror it as best as possible.
And look at the field getting quite bunched up here. 40 cars out there in the field. Not sure what's happened to Ruggia. Ruggia, I think, made a pit stop. Because we're seeing he made a pit stop, of course. He's dropped all the way down to 20th. So during that pace car period, Justin Ruggia, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, dropped down to 20th. He was joined by Scott Gamble in the pit lane and a lot of cars from 27th onwards. But for Darren Lobb, the Ferrari screams out of the final corner, and we recommence green flag action here from Montreal. And a comfortable advantage by Lobb here into turn 2.
Yeah, great jump there. Runs it a little wide into turn 1. It's going to compromise a bit on the exit of 2, but got himself a fantastic start. Half a second gain over Edwards. Lattimore, likewise, another half second behind in third. So the front three cars getting away very well. Looks like everyone else later in the field, likewise, getting away similarly good, and a couple of positional changes as well through that there.
Michael Kirkham on screen. Kirkham up a few spots from 15th. Running one of the few Porsches out there in the field, at least in your top 15 spots. We only have 2 Porsches. Justin Wallace, the other one. I saw Van Gisbergen up in a 4th there. That just changed on the timing screen. So Van Gisbergen's made a move there on Danny Davison, and visually it's confirmed.
Yeah, Van Gisbergen getting a fantastic jump in that the Ford there. So he'll get himself up into 4th. Got his eyes forward now with Steve Lattimore up ahead. We'll jump back to a replay and see if we can see this move.
Oh, this is a game of chess, I think. Tell you what, Davison's... I mean, I think that's more of an unforced error than anything. Davison just didn't get away at all. Now, are the tyres cold, as we see a penalty for the 696 car of Damon Stockton? But are the tyres cold after the pace car period, obviously?
Yeah, the tyres will have dropped down just a little bit on the restart. No doubt the guys will be would have ridden the brakes around a lot to try and keep the heat in through the brakes and the carcass of the tyre, but certainly not going to have as much grip advantage as they would have had earlier on.
And in these cars, depending on which GTE you run, does it differ on the manufacturer as to whether or not it warms up the tyres differently? Because we know you're experienced in these GTEs, but let's say if you run the BMW, are the tyres cooler compared to something else? Was that a spinner in the back, by the way, as I say that?
Yeah, there was a Ferrari turned around at turn 2 there. It looks like Steve Bartholomew getting back underway. No damage on that car, so I think a little bit of an unforced error there for him, but that will drop him well down the order, down in 25th at the moment. So a lot of work still to do, but no damage on that car, so should be able to get back up towards the front of the track. But as far as the cars getting back underway with tyre temperatures, probably, if anything, the Porsche maybe a little easier to get up. Obviously, with the engine over the back of the tyre certainly does help, but you lose that little bit of turn-in advantage. BMW probably, polar opposite, having the engine across the front, going to help it a lot smoother. But the Ferraris and the Fords, probably the more neutral of the two to get up and running.
And this is through the hairpin right now. And what Daniel's saying there, of course, is the fact that we do have many manufacturers out there, the BMW, the Ford, the Ferrari, the Porsche in your GTE field. So these cars are not balanced, although they do run fixed setups, but the cars are all still a little differently.
Yeah, and we've seen a great run from the series organisers in setting up this fixed series and setup. They've really balanced all 4 cars out effectively well, and as a result of that, we're seeing some fantastic racing. I think there's maybe still a little bit of a tweak that I saw in the Discord chat earlier about maybe trying to just maybe tighten up a bit with the Porsche, but all in all, for what they've been able to do with the manufacturers, it's been absolutely fantastic.
So Pat Gallo is still on screen. Pat Gallo's throwing that Ferrari over the curbs here in the first sector. Man, I love this circuit. Can I give you a trivia, Daniel? What do you think's my favourite circuit in all of motorsports?
Look, if I'm a betting man, I'm going to say Montreal.
Yes. You should have bet something before you answered it. Would have given you a bit of money. Man, I love this circuit. It's so fun as we see more penalties there. This is the car 773. Oh, the lead here. There's Edwards and Lobb. Edwards and Lobb are alongside each other. So we'll look at the penalty in a moment's time. But this is Darren Lobb. And Edwards fighting for P1 here across this main straight. And look at those retro liveries in these overcast, cloudy skies at Montreal. And it's just such a brilliant sight here for retro round. And here they go through the final corner. Edwards back into P1, confirmed.
Yeah, really strong drive there from Edwards out of turn 10. Set it up beautifully and got the move done. I don't think Loeb's going to let him go too far away. We see him closing down in turns 1 and 2 there, getting right up on the back of that Ford. So he's raring to get back on with this, and hopefully these two will start fighting on a little bit harder. We are noticing, though, that the front three, though, really starting to open up a little bit of a gap over Van Gisbergen there now in 4th. So they've got themselves a 1.5 second advantage, and that's seeming to increase ever more.
I'm surprised about that too, because they were battling away at the hairpin at Montreal. Le Pongle, as it's called. not the best with my French. The best French word I can pronounce, Daniel, is Simon. Believe it or not.
It's more French words than I can pronounce. I'll probably give you that one pretty comfortably. It looks like Lobdo's starting to come down a little bit of pressure from Lattimore. The gap down to just over 0.5 of a second as they funnel down into 10. And these three drivers very equally matched in this early phase of the race.
It's a nice scrap for the lead here. Now, it's the longest format we have. We have 3 endurance races all season in the AMF GT series. And this will be the last one for our 2019 campaign. The last 2 rounds at Sebring and Silverstone. Silverstone in my top 3 favorite circuits of all time. Trivia time again. We will, those 2 are 45-minute races. So that's our standard format. We have 6 of them per season. As we watch Justin Wallace on screen. Look at that purple time, though, on the left-hand side of the screen, Daniel, for Shane Van Gisbergen. He's up the pace there. He's probably got some motivation from you.
I don't know if it's motivation from me, mate. We know he's an extremely talented individual there, as we see Habits going very defensive against Adam Gardner there in the background. But maybe the Ford's just starting to come on, easing in those tyres, and as we see it now, he's starting to close down that gap in force. So for all the viewers out there, keep an eye on that timing tree on the left of screen. You'll be able to see as these drivers are closing up. But yeah, Van Gisbergen really starting to get underway now.
I find this interesting. There's a lot of sunlight here through the left-hand side of the circuit. Now, it's a clockwise circuit at Montreal, so we're going to round the hairpin, and we'll see if the clouds, the virtual clouds, have just moved out of the way here as we watch Darren Lobb. Darren Lobb is actually still through the final corner. This is Jordan Pruden, on screen, but Darren Lobb is all over the rear end of Craig Edwards, and we could see a fight for the lead. The sun is out, and that means track temperatures are going to rise, but Edwards looks fine in the lead.
Yeah, Edwards sitting pretty comfortable. He goes a little bit defensive, parks the car just on the racing line. That's going to make it really hard for Loeb to come through there. And Lattimore likewise, just following in the trails. We can see temperature and conditions out there at the moment, 20 degrees ambient, 24 degrees on track, so almost perfect for these drivers to be going around. There's a little bit of wind out there, so that will make it a little bit tricky around the course, blowing at about 8 to 12 kilometres an hour there, but all in all, looking like a very, very good day as we see one of the JPS Simshed's cars, I think it was one of the Porsches going off at turn 14 there, so that's an unfortunate error there, but Jeremy Clark on screen sitting down in 16th right now, in the middle of a bit of a Porsche and Ferrari sandwich there. He's got Jesse Butler just ahead and Pat Gallo really trying to push his way through in that Mach 1 eSports car.
Pat Gallo's had a good season, let me tell you that. I see Scott Gamble losing a couple of positions in that Ford behind. He's behind this train here that we're watching. So that was just through timing screens. Now our lead driver who'd made a pit stop, I can see, is Justin Ruggia. Now I've had some issues locally with my timing screen, so I have to get you, Daniel, to confirm that. But as far as I know, through the pace car period, it was Ruggia who was our lead driver, and there he is on screen, who went to the box.
Yeah, we did see him come down the lane early on, a very quick stop just to get a bit of fuel into that car. So that's one out of the way. Don't forget we've got 2 mandatory stops for these drivers out here tonight. One has to include tyres. So Justin's sitting pretty comfortable right now if this race is to go green for the remainder of the event. Sits himself down in 17th position right now, and he's coming along very, very nicely.
Still watching Ruggia here. He's got a 3-second advantage to Dullahan behind. Pat Gallo up ahead, by the way. He skips the chicane. I see someone skipping the chicane. So there is Pat Gallo there taking the shortcut, and that's going to be a slowdown in iRacing.
Yeah, he'll want to clear that as soon as possible. If he can back it up just a touch through this early part of the lap, should be able to clear it pretty comfortably. But having said that, he's got Paul Wood just behind in that Oz Sim Racers Ferrari there. He'll want to get through as quick as possible, but that will hurt Pat Gallo just a bit.
Yeah, so Pat Gallo with a slowdown that's always going to kill you in iRacing. This is Kenneth Ladder now on screen. Kenneth Ladder, who, again, a driver who's right behind his teammate of Justin Wallace. Justin Wallace is in good position for the championship, so they'll have to work together, these two. Now, when commentators say that, Daniel, what does that mean when we say that? They have to work together. Does that mean they work together on strategy to make that one compulsory pit stop we have today? Or is it, there's 2 compulsory pit stops, but you have to take 4 tires in one stop. Is there any other ways you can work together as a team?
Look, it's probably a little bit harder around this circuit. Probably with the draft we would have seen, or we did see at Le Mans, that's probably the ideal scenario for it. But around this circuit here, it's a little bit harder. You're a lot more on the brakes. It's not as easy to gain an advantage through a bit of a 2-car train. If anything, potentially could hinder later on. That being said, I mean, you could look at parking cars in front of drivers, which we do not endorse. I mean, a lot of these guys race exceptionally fairly through here, and I would be very surprised if we saw any sort of team tactics like that coming into play.
This is Fusion Sim Racing's Nathan Huppertz. What a brilliant shot, isn't it? Let's ride on board with him for a few more corners. The brilliant part about that bridge there is that it's a brilliant braking point too, Daniel, because it is pretty much in most cars the beginning of when you slam your left foot onto that brake pedal, or right foot, depending on which sort of braking method you use.
Yeah, and again, one of those brake markers that doesn't really change regardless of time of day or weather as well. It's a movable object, not going to go anywhere. A lot of these drivers, we know as they get up to speed, they always look for small reference markers along the way. Some use shadows, some use a fixed point, and having something like that up ahead of you always ideal. As we see, Happett's going very defensive through the final corner, gets that Fusion car up on 2 wheels, and that looks to going to allow Justin Wallace to get a good run here in the Porsche there.
I've never seen 3 wide into Montreal turn 1. I've never seen it work, I should say, and rightly so. Everyone's going to form up. Now, did Huppertz not lose a position there?
No, he's retained it beautifully. He got a fantastic run there out of 14.
Wow, so Nathan Huppertz. So wait, I'm getting confused now. Huppertz was the one who had the moment on the exit? That's so surprising. I'm getting confused as to who's the one who lost traction on the exit. That's awesome for Huppertz. It was him.
Yeah, very good work for him under the right foot there. Actually, if anything, opened up a little bit of a gap from Wallace. The biggest loser out of that little lot was Kenneth Latta, who on the run into one, we saw him right alongside his teammate there, Justin Wallace, and seems to have dropped off just a little bit. The gap about half a second now behind. He's got a couple of the Mach 1 Esports cars. He's got 3 of them, in fact, lining up behind there. So those guys are all pushing on well. But Van Gisbergen now getting up in towards 3rd position.
Yeah, hello. Look at this. Van Gisbergen looking for that final podium position provisionally. And there he'll make his way past Stephen Lattimore. Now he's representing OSR today is Van Gisbergen. Also represents Team Redline at times. Does a lot of sim racing with, I'd say, Kirchhoff, Max Verstappen. A lot of those guys from one of the best sim racing teams in the world, run by Dom Doohan himself. And there is Van Gisbergen finally into 3rd. Edwards, though, still remains ahead of Lobb. And what we did there was when we switched to Lattimore, I was keeping my eyes on that lead battle. But a good pass, nevertheless, from Van Gisbergen. A very simple one, Daniel. Not sure if you can really analyse anything out of that.
No, it's just great placement from Shane. He got a really nice run out of 10, parked the car exactly where he needed to on the run into 13 and just floated it through beautifully. So I think really sensible driving there from Lattimore, not pushing the issue. We are only 25 minutes into this one. Still a lot of racing left to go here. And he's got opportunities to come back later on. The gap between Van Gisbergen now and Loeb just over 1.5 seconds. So a lot of work now for Shane to come on. But looking at the lap times, he's really got that car working very, very nicely.
You know, I'd love to see brake wear in iRacing because I do know, as Ruggi is up on screen, I believe we're hearing word he may have had an issue the past couple of corners, so that's why he's down into 23rd. But I would like to see brake wear in iRacing because I remember I had a race here back in 2014, Daniel, where everybody except for P1 and P2 lost their brakes in an FSR race, and we all trundled across the line. I think one driver came across the finish line in 8th, scored points, and they were 45 seconds off the pace or something because they had no brakes. Oh, and there's a spinner as well, just as I say that. So spinners ahead here. Martin Casey involved. Casey for Delta Force Racing involved down the back of the pack. Here's the replay. Talk us through it.
Yeah, it looks like the Porsche head getting a good run. Casey just sitting in behind nicely, going for a move down into 10. And it looks like just missed the braking marker and clips the Century Batteries car just in the back corner. That's going to damage both of those guys. So a little bit of an unforced error there from Casey, not getting that car just wide enough to make that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. What would you like to see introduced into iRacing, apart from breakwear, which I want to see?
Look, I'm probably on the bandwagon, as a lot of others are, for rain. That would be the number one equaliser that I would love to see in this sim. We've got a lot of great stuff come through already with the change of day to night and the weather conditions now. I think rain is the next big thing. And then once we get that, I would love to see the ability to actually park a car in a race partway through like Le Mans, apply a quick setup change if you need to, and then get back underway.
Oh, okay. I've never heard that one before. It's a good one. As we see a 20-second stop and hold penalty for the 363 car. That was for rear-end contact with the 186. So the 363 car was Martin Casey. That was just what we saw on screen. And that was for his collision with the 186 car of Jason Dullahan for Pulse Racing Team. Now, we do have wet weather in iRacing, Daniel. You didn't know?
Well, we have dirt where it's a little bit wet when you start, but I still wouldn't consider that wet.
You're forgetting it. No, grab the supercar in 70-degree track temperature. Is that not a good joke?
Yeah, or the FW31 on a dirt track.
I've actually never tried that. I'm going to do that right after this race. The beauty of virtual racing. You can send the Williams over the jumps as we see more penalties down the bottom of the order?
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't seen what it's like after the new damage model's been implemented, but certainly one that will fly. As we see Dave Clement up on screen at the moment, he's battling with Dave Stockton there for the DPR cars. These guys are well down the order, 29th and 30th respectively, and just having their own little scrap here at the back end of the field, and great to see them still pushing on as they're going around.
Yep, so Dave Clements down the back end of the order. Here's Simon Larder up on screen for Riot Sim Racing. Simon Larder right ahead of Ruggia, Gamble, Crisdale. There's two JP Simshed cars down the back of the order. Not a good race, I have to say, for the two JPSS cars.
No, the guy's probably down a little further than ideally where they'd want to be. Having said that, Rob Crisdale up 12 spots at the moment from where he started, so he's getting on with it. We see that Simon Larder spinning in the BMW there, so that's not ideal, but we'll keep an eye on that and see how these guys come through. Justin Ruggia up on screen at the moment, sitting down in 20th position. He's got Steve Bartholomew ahead in the red Ford, who we saw having a spin earlier on in the race down in turn 2, a little bit of an unforced error, but both these drivers now getting back underway, and Ruggia's still the best placed driver at the moment who has completed their first compulsory stop.
Oh, and Adam Gardner's had a spin. There's the Mach 1 Esports car around at what looks like turn 2 here at Montreal. And, please don't be contact. He's just got him way too hot, hasn't he? You want to throw the car into that corner, Daniel, but he's just got a mammoth amount of lift-off oversteer.
Yeah, it looked like the car really struggled on turn-in entry, as you say, and just drifted wide, and then ultimately when the back end's gripped, it's gone right around on him. So unfortunate there, although we did see all the other Mach 1 Esports cars behind managing to get their way through. Richard Hunter for DPR sitting down 14th. That great throwback livery to Jimmy Richards, and the similar livery to what we saw Penrite Erebus run at Sandown last weekend in the V8 Supercars. So great to see this. And Daniel Misdale, I saw in chat, spent a lot of time getting these cars up and running, and done a fantastic job to present the DPR cars this race.
Yeah, brilliant job by everybody in the community. Get these retro liveries out there. As we see issues, this is Van Gisbergen on screen going very slow here, Van Gisbergen, and he's lost that third position to Steven Lattimore. So Van Gisbergen, and I have to call it already, I haven't seen the replay yet. It could potentially be a slowdown at the final corner. Now we're half an hour through the event, 1 hour to go in this 90-minute enduro. Pit stops are coming. We know the rules, Daniel. We're expecting 2 pit stops today, and in one of those pit stops, you need to take 4 tires. We've seen Adam Gardner is currently in the pit lane. Play strategy to perfection. Silverstone last season reminds me of some brilliant tricks of the trade he tried to pull off as we watch the replay.
Well, yeah, we saw him have a run at, I think it was Silverstone last time out, where he tried doing back-to-back stints. Maybe not quite worked, but we see Van Gisbergen getting that slowdown out at 14. I think ideally tonight, the ideal strategy probably going to be come in every 30 minutes, top the car off, obviously get the tyres towards the back end of the stint and push on as hard as possible. Darren Loeb, though, starting to close back in on Craig Edwards. These two have not been more than, I think, 0.8 of a second at best throughout the first 30 minutes of the race, and positional changes swapped multiple times for these two. So they're really firing on halfway point, 1/3 down.
And Scott Newton behind the scenes telling us that Montreal can be a high fuel burning circuit. So if you're Darren Loeb and you're in that slipstream for most of this race, Daniel, it could mean you could have that extra quick pit stop.
Yeah, and you can also gain a little bit of time of just come off that throttle a little bit early on the corners and coast where you can, especially if you're sitting behind a draft. You're going to carry a little bit extra momentum on the run into the brakes, so probably not a bad idea to save that bit of fuel. Just keeping an eye on where Adam Gardner popped out after his stop. Can't see where he is, but his stop looked to be relatively quick, about a 1 minute stationary time for him, so potential that he did take tyres there.
Yeah, that's critical. Keep an eye on that for sure. And now we watch Paul Wood up on screen in 14th. So if you're one of the lead drivers, the problem is if you make a pit stop, Daniel, I think your spotters need to be in your ears telling you where the clear track is, because the field is quite spread out now after half an hour, but you don't want to be pitting and then feeding out into... I mean, look at the track map on the right-hand side of the screen. Perfect timing. The leaders are there on the back straight. You see the EDW of Edwards. Those are your leaders. You pit right now. There's a bit of room there on the run to the hairpin. Not so much room in the middle sector. Apart from that, there doesn't seem to be any space.
No, all these cars, as much as they are spread out, doesn't leave you a lot of opportunity to drop into a clear bit of track. But for a lot of these drivers, they do run some great telemetry behind the scenes, like the Z1 and JRT, which will help predict the likelihood of where they're going to drop back in. And for the guys that are running the spotters out there tonight, that'll certainly help no end to get them into a nice secure position, get back underway and minimise the time loss.
Brilliant Apex Racing TV overlay doing its job there, showing us where everybody's positioned here on track in this very strategic event that is Week 10, Round 10 for Season 9 of the AMF GT Series. And the AMF GT Series, one of the most well-run series in all of iRacing. Race Control, obviously sponsored by Harvey Bay Autoglass. Daniel, we know the race management service, which is available at rms55.com.au, does a brilliant job in terms of sorting out grid, a lot of stuff for coding in terms of iRacing. AMF is a series that I hope grows over the next couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. They've really come on leaps and bounds since the early days, and the quality of guys behind the scenes helping continue to build the series and set it up is getting better and better. And I think absolute hats off to the organisation and management of the series to get it to where it's gone. And like you say, I think it's only going to go in leaps and bounds further forward as this continues on.
Switch our focus to Jason Cozzi. He's just ahead of Sal Galenti, right behind Robert Crusdale. Jason Cozzi, who haven't seen much of him in this series. Is this his first race in the top split or something, Daniel? Because I haven't seen much of Jason Cozzi in the past.
No, it's not a name that I've seen throughout the series so far. So potentially we are having Jason up for the first time here in top split, and if it is, great to see him up here as well, doing a pretty solid effort, it must be said, sitting in the 19th position at the moment. and finding himself in and around some pretty handy talent, it must be said, at the moment. Sol Galenti just behind, Rob Crusdale just in front, and he's coming on very, very nicely.
Bartholomew's in the pit lane. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, those pit stops are about to arrive soon. So there's the Redback racing car servicing that vehicle. We switch our focus to Ruggier here, who's all on his own after his early pit stop. Now, he's got one of those stops out of the way. I'll tell you what, Ruggier's actually positioned quite well here, Daniel.
Yeah, I think, if anything, he's going to really jump up the field as we see the other drivers come in for their respective stops. We're getting one of those done and underway while we had the safety car, really a smart move there. So we'll look for him to continue further forward and see what he can do. Shane Van Gisbergen back on screen. They're just putting a lap on a couple of guys that have come out of the respective pit stops, not too far behind Steve Lattimore as they run down into 13 and 14. And after that last little slowdown we saw from Gisbergen getting back underway, as we see another one of the Mark 1 Esports cars off at 14. I think he's just letting everyone go through before he rejoins, so smart awareness there.
Yep, good awareness, of course, part of the job here in endurance racing. I remember my first ever endurance race, Daniel. It was in a very, I think it was almost like it wasn't iRacing, it was like a bottom split equivalent in another sim. And I remember I had to lap a lot of cars as a result of it. Obviously, I shouldn't have entered the league. I think it should have been illegal for me. But point is, to stop sounding arrogant, is I had to pass so many cars, and I realized, you know what, the biggest challenge of endurance racing is not trying to be fast and win this race, it's trying to maneuver your way around all the traffic. If you're an LMP1 car, you're in a tough challenge in a, let's say, Le Mans 24-hour event.
Yeah, race management is absolutely crucial, especially in endurance and multi-car format. So for the drivers, may not be the quickest out there, keeping a good awareness of the flags and what's going on around is certainly key. And for all the drivers here in iRacing, they do run the little black box that'll tell them who's up and closing. And hats off to a lot of these drivers, very aware of what's going on around them. And the result of that, we don't see anywhere near the collisions we've seen in some other series. So for the talent that's out here, they're doing an absolutely fantastic job keeping aware of all that.
So we're hearing word that Adam Gardner could have been into the wall, and we may have a replay of that, hopefully. Scott Newton, brilliant behind the scenes, our producer, who showing Adam Gardner. This looks like a private test session. There's no one out there on the racetrack. Here he heads through the final corner. Into the wall of champions is Adam Gardner, and that's how desperate he is to win a championship, I think unintentionally, into the wall. And he's going the wrong way. Someone tell him to turn around. I think he's just waiting for the rest of the field to come through.
Yeah, well, saw him getting back underway, so good to see that he doesn't look to have sustained too much damage, but we'll keep an eye on that to see how he does filter back through as a result of that now.
Yeah, and these are the leaders, so that's why Gardner was just allowing all the rest of the leaders through. And Gardner made a pit stop already in this race, so we're gunning for a better result for him. He was definitely gunning for no spins this race. I can't believe it though, Daniel. How are there 3 Fords in the top 4? It's not the AMF GT series anymore. This is not like I remember it. Normally it's always a Ferrari or something up ahead.
Well, yeah, throughout the series we've seen a lot of Ferrari, BMW. Maybe not seen the Porsche up to where it needs to be, but certainly that Ford in the hands of Craig Edwards has been thereabouts. So to have 3 of them up in the top 5 is absolutely fantastic. I think the guys are really starting to nail that fixed setup for that car. Having said that, to see Lowe up there, a driver we haven't seen traditionally in top split, taking to the likes of Edwards, doing absolutely fantastic. Neil Pearson diving down the lane for his first stop tonight. But all in all, I think everything going very, very well. We'll look to see those BMWs though come back later on. Like we say, last few endurances, those cars have been absolutely outstanding on their tyres. So if any car can come back through the field, certainly going to be that, the BMW.
And there are the 2 Mac 1 Esports cars on screen of Hearn and Vandenberg. Through the first couple of corners, they dispose of what looked like a JP Simshed car there, of Rob Crusdale. Crusdale's been lapped by this bunch. Pearson into the pit lane, like you said. It's a tough entry, Daniel. I've seen a lot of accidents here at Montreal because you can brake later and still make the pit entry, but you have to be careful of everybody else that doesn't opt to enter the pits. And I remember I had a race with Pablo Lopez in the past here, And he ended up winning by half a second over me because, and you know what the difference was? He held me up under braking when I tried to pit. I made a stupid mistake on my part.
Yeah, for the drivers that are able to get a run in through the pits as quick as possible, there's a lot of time to be gained on that. Very similar entry here to what we see at the Brazilian circuit, except for the run up the hill into pit lane. So for the guys that are able to get in there smooth and cleanly, it's a lot of time advantage to be had. So we'll watch that later on. But yeah, to lose half a second, very easy to do if you're just miss the side of something or lose it just a touch.
You want some more Formula One knowledge? You probably know this. This was the circuit that the 2010 F1 race here, most people would know this, inspired the Pirelli tyres that we currently have in modern day Formula One. And that race was one of my favorite of all time too, to watch in F1. Wasn't the best of all time. One of, I'd say if I had to create like a top 20 list, it would be up there. 2010 Montreal. I loved it.
I'll take that piece of trivia because I didn't even know that, so I probably can't remember
really?
what actually happened in that race, to be fair. So that being said, probably don't catch as many as I should anyway.
No, obviously, in 2010 Formula One, you had your Bridgestone tyres and you had your options and your primes. Your options, obviously, like the softer of the two compounds. So your primes, you could run the whole race pretty much and you'll be fine. There's almost like a drop-off of 0.3 at most. But your options, maybe you run about 25, 30 laps. You can get away with it. You know what I mean? Like it depends on the racetrack. And then when they came to Montreal, every race in 2010 was essentially a one-stop. For some reason in Montreal, the abrasion of the circuit and the Bridgestone tyres just didn't mix well together. And it ended up becoming a two-stop race. Lewis Hamilton ended up winning at the end of the day, of course, as usual. I think he's got second most wins of all time at the moment in F1. As we watch Lattimore and Van Gisbergen battle, we'll finish this anecdote in a mile. No, is that Lattimore? Yes, it is. Lattimore and Van Gisbergen here for the third and fourth positions. And Van Gisbergen up into third, finally, after losing it earlier on with that slowdown. Yeah,
it's about the third time we've seen these two have a pass down into the final complex of the circuit. So great respect for both these two drivers. Van Gisbergen jumping back up into third spot, as we also see Danny Davison and Justin Wallace coming in for their first pit stops as well. But these two fighting for that third position at the moment, a lot of respect between them, and we'll now look to see whether Shane can start re-establishing that lead that he had early on.
Yeah, so this is important coming towards the pit stop phase. Van Gisbergen's going to floor it here, use up all the rubber available in that Ford GTE, and the OSR driver will aim to catch the leaders. I'm surprised they're about 7 seconds off that lead bunch. Now, I'm not sure where they've lost that time. Daniel, I'd love to see the lap gaps, or whatever the graphic's called. I'd love to see the gaps over the past few laps, just to see where they've lost the time. Have a look at that. It seemed to all happen in one lap there, I think.
Yeah, not much in it. That's an interesting thing. I think that was part of where Shane had that slowdown and ultimately stopped. The big thing I want to see is what happens. We got Darren Lowe actually back up in front of the race. He's now got away from Craig Edwards. That gap just on 3 seconds. We see Edwards down in the lane, so we missed that one. As we'll see if we can drop back to a replay here. But Darren Loeb getting up into first place now.
And Loeb slowed down. Can we follow this replay on? No, sorry, that's a lapped car. Goodness me, that was proper Murray Walker, that. That's a lapped car out of the way, and I thought that was Darren Loeb for some reason. He continues away in the lead, but it's Edwards into the pit lane. Lee Vandenberg in the Mach 1 Esports car joins him. Vandenberg's had an impressive season, and we'll hope to end it on a high here. Here we ride back on, focusing on Stephen Lattimore right behind Shane Van Gisbergen. So these two squabbling now, about 5 seconds away from Darren Loeb. There's a lot of traffic to maneuver around in this part of the race. This is a brilliant time to pit now because of that.
Yeah, probably not a bad idea as we see one of the Fusion Sim cars and Matt Morris battling just back there. But that looked to have hurt Lattimore a little bit, being held up as Shane was able to get around the Fusion car there. So we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, out front now, Loeb extending the gap 5.3 seconds over Van Gisbergen as we saw Craig Edwards jump down the lane. He's back out on track now after his first stop. We'll just keep an eye as they all filter through to see where he drops back in. But yeah, all starting to happen up front now.
So we'll wait and see whether or not any of these two box right now. If Van Gisbergen does, he's got to be careful here of Lattimore in the braking zone. Because if Lattimore does box, Van Gisbergen joins him. He doesn't need to worry about that. And look at the time Van Gisbergen closes in on the entry. Now, those yellow cones there are where the pit entry begins. And they've got to be careful here in terms of switching on that pit limiter. But I feel like Van Gisbergen gained maybe a tenth or two.
Yeah, Van Gisbergen very good on the entry into brakes. We'll see what transpires here, whether either one of these drivers decides to take tyres early on. I think they're going to be really, really mindful of how this is going to unfold. But up front, Loeb's still going around another lap. He's got himself now 22 seconds over the now second place of Chad Hearn for Mach 1 Esports. So keep an eye there. But it looks like Van Gisbergen getting out early. Lattimore taking tyres. So that's his tyre stop done and dusted now.
Yeah, so very important part of the race. Ruggier, how about him climbing up through the order? He's ahead of Stephen Lattimore. That's how brilliant this race has gone for Justin Ruggier. We talked about that early pit stop benefiting him. And the Super 2 driver now having a brilliant race so far.
Yeah, doing an absolutely great job. And looks like he will still fall behind Van Gisbergen after his early stop, but Lattimore drops out now down to 11th position after taking those tyres. So it's all starting to shake up here, and yeah, Ruggier really starting to come on strong. So we'll keep an eye now as we crossed just over halfway when he will come down the lane for his second and final stop tonight.
Yeah, so we'll keep eyes on that as usual. We only have 2 eyes, but we'll manage them throughout this event somehow. There are the stops up on screen. Loeb, our leader, still yet to enter the pit lane. Darren Loeb running the 999 car. Now, to finish that anecdote earlier, the race here, like we said, as Chad Hearn jumps into box. So there was like a 2-stop race in Formula One, and Bernie Eccleston loved the race so much, he told Pirelli, who were jumping into the new contract from 2011 onwards, he said, replicate this race. This is what I want. And then I remember next year at Turkey, we had 140 overtakes in a race or something. I think there were 3 or 4 stop races at one point. So they really overdid it. And whether you like it or not, it just produced a different Formula One.
Yeah, it's an interesting way that it all happens about. And I mean, for someone like Bernie Eccleston to try and get the racing brought out that way, it's certainly a man with a lot of power to get it done. So I think, having said that, it's brought some fantastic racing into Formula One and continuing on ever.
I'll tell you what, Ruggier's so smart to pit earlier on in this event, and he's only, 7-8 seconds behind Shane Van Gisbergen. So Van Gisbergen obviously races in Supercar Series. Supercars champion is Van Gisbergen. Ruggier Super 2. Trying to make the move up full-time to the Supercar Series. This is Neil Pearson for DPR Racing down the back end of the top 10. And Darren Loeb's in the pit lane. So this is critical to watch now. Darren Loeb will service that car. Now, if you're Darren Loeb, do you take 4 tyres?
I think you're probably just trying to get the fuel done. You would have looked at the time that Van Gisbergen was in the lane, and you'll probably do whatever you can do to retain that lead. As we see Pearson down the inside, getting a move done on Sal Galenti, and that should stick. Goes around the outside, so that's a great move into 10. But yeah, I think Lowe will probably just stick with the fuel at this point. Having said that, he's still sitting stationary, and Gisbergen likely to come around him now.
This is going to be critical. Now, remember, a very short exit, so I think Loeb will be okay here through the pit exit. Very slow to get away, isn't he? And he just files ahead here of SVG. So, work to perfection there, Daniel. You called it. You were a bit nervous, I could tell, whether or not you'd make it. But this is the deception that the Montreal pit lane gives you. Now, how about that? Ruggier making his second and final stop of the day already.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Coming on just after the 45-minute of the race. So 40 minutes still left on the clock. He's got a long way to go on that new set of tyres, but that's certainly going to bring a lot of yield to him early on. I'm really surprised to see just how much time Van Gisbergen has been actually able to close up. That gap not too long ago before pit stops took place, just over 5 seconds. So to have it down under 1.5, that's a fantastic outlap from Shane.
And one driver of Ruggier making a good pit stop and making his final of the day. And we haven't even taken our first ad break. That's how quick Justin Ruggier has been today. Don't leave us. We'll take a quick commercial break, and we will see you after this. You are watching Week 10, Season 9 of the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series. Welcome back to Week 10 action here for Season 9 of the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series. And don't let that lead gap deceive you. That is Darren Lobb under attack from Shane van Gisbergen. And Jonathan Simon in the commentary booth alongside Daniel Leet, Scott Newton behind the scenes in production. And Daniel, this is what we didn't expect. Not that we don't think Shane van Gisbergen is a good driver, but somehow he's just litting up the pace here in this second stint.
Yeah, Shane coming on exceptionally strong after that first round of pit stops, and the Ford looking really, really well poised underfoot. He's actually been a couple of tenths quicker than what we've seen from Darren Lobb, but Darren having to contend with a little bit of traffic out front is always tough when you're the first car in that track.
And SVG, who started this race from the second row, started this race from fifth, actually, excuse me, I should say. He's having a good one this afternoon, running that famous 97. Do you know why he always runs the 97? I've never actually heard why or looked into it.
No, I don't know a lot about it. I know he's always run it from the time I've seen him in the V8 supercars, and great to see him still carrying that tradition. I guess it's one of those superstitious things. You always get a number and you retain it. I know I always had my particular number. It was one given to me by the wife. She picked it out of a few things, and I've always kept that. So one of those things, you always stick with something that holds that little bit of sentimental value for you.
So what's the number you run?
The 527. So
really? Even in a series where you don't have to run triple digits?
Yep, even in a series, always run it.
Well, what if you play basketball then? You can only run double digits.
I guess we'll make another one out the front.
You grab like 52, 27. Oh, man. 27, Gilles-Villeneuve's number, and also run by Nico Hulkenberg, a very iconic number in at least the world of Formula One. Van Gisbergen, though, loves the 97. My favorite number... Oh, and by the way, as I say this, Van Gisbergen is really pushing hard as we ride on board with him. I'd love to run the 7 or the 8. I don't know why. 7 looks cool, but I've always loved the 8. I think it's because it's the first number I really ran when I was younger. Big Kobe Bryant fan when it comes to basketball. Oh, and there's a spinner! Lobb our leaders into the wall! Unexpectedly! Darren Lobb is into the wall with could have to say a forced error with no contact, but Van Gisbergen packed the pressure on, and that Ferrari, well, I'm not sure if there was damage, but we'll have a look here.
Yeah, it looks like he's just caught the inside curb there of turn 9 and unsettled that car just enough to loop it around. That's really unfortunate for Lobb. He was having an absolutely fantastic race for DPR there, and a little bit of a shame to see it unfold the way it did, but tremendous pressure from SVG that he was applying out of second position there. So we'll keep an eye and see how he goes recovering. You can see Pat Gallo up in third, and Pat actually our last driver to yet come down the lane for his stop so far tonight. So pushing on a long way as we see Loeb jump down, and this will be his time to get the tyres done and dusted now. Yeah,
Gallo could probably go a few more minutes and you have to service, otherwise he'll run out of fuel. But Lobb's entered the pit lane this lap, and it's a good time as a driver, Daniel, to refresh your mindset.
Yeah, you'll need just take that little bit of time. It's going to be about a minute stop stationary, so not a bad chance just to get the mind refocused and get back underway. It was a little bit of a shame to see the spin the way it did, but he'll reset and come back on strong as we've seen throughout the course of the night so far.
Pat Gallo is up on screen in the second position now. Who would have expected him to be in P2 so far in this race? As we said, he's still yet to make that stop, so we'll keep eyes on that for sure. But Van Gisbergen has quite a comfortable advantage. Now, what does that mean for the second stop now in this race, Daniel, when you all make this out? Because does that mean Edwards, maybe Lattimore's going to possibly challenge Van Gisbergen for the lead, or do you think he's got it confirmed?
Well, look, I'm not too sure. I think we've seen Lattimore drop off a little bit with his stop. He did take tyres early on and has dropped in behind Danny Davison and Craig Edwards. So a couple of strong competitors there that he will need to get past. But with Shane coming down the lane, we know he probably doesn't need as much fuel in that stop, but it's going to be extremely tight between these guys. Not a lot of gap between them when it all does compress back again. As we continue to watch Gallo going on, jump back to a couple more of the Mark 1 Esports cars, Chad Hearn and Lee Vandenberg. scrapping it out. These guys currently sitting in the 11th and 12th spot respectively, and we saw earlier in the week when they launched this livery, it was representative of the 97 Paul Morris livery, and that's really come up a treat with these cars. Great to see them in something a little different to what we traditionally see with the green, black and silver of their standard livery, but cars looking exceptionally nice out there tonight.
Yeah, looking very good here for Retro Round. Now, thanks, of course, to somebody in the YouTube chat who mentioned that it was Shane Van Gisbergen's dad's number. Now, the problem is, can we ask his dad why he runs number 97? The story continues. There's always a story to a number, of course. And this is Jesse Butler for JP Simshed. Up into the top 10 is Jesse Butler. Right ahead of Neil Pearson. There aren't many... Trying to find how many 300 drivers are in your top 20. Oh, there are a few. So Lee Vandenberg's in 16th. Jason Cozzie's 17th. Crisdale 19th. And that's it. But Jesse Butler leads your amateur field in those 300s. Good race so far.
Yeah, Jesse was one of the last drivers to come down the lane for his stop as well. That still being held by Pat Gallo. But all in all, for Jesse, been a really good run out there tonight, up a few spots from where he started and pushing on pretty nicely in that Porsche. You see him having a little bit of side-to-side with the DPR car there at Neil Pearson, and Neil does manage to get that positional change. So a little bit of argy-bargy between these two, but all in all, great racing between them.
Yeah, certainly good racing. Here's Pat Gallo finally in the pits. I told you he was going to go a few more minutes. How long does this tank run, Daniel? Just over an hour, we assume, as we know.
Yeah, he generally ran the hour mark. It's what we've seen at Le Mans this year for the 24-hour race. So for Pat to be able to squeeze that car out as long as he had, it's been a great run. The big thing he's going to have to be concerned, he still needs to come down the lane for one more stop. So we'll keep an eye on how quick he does. I think he's in there doing tyres at the moment. It's about 30 seconds a lap so far. So this is the first of two stops and the long one getting out of the way first.
We are in that closing half an hour here for our final Enduro of Season 9. There is Jesse Butler into the pit lane. Here's Mr. Hubbets down at turn number 2 here at Montreal. Technically, this left-hander is turn 2. Turn 1 is that opening right kink. It's essentially a full throttle section of the racetrack. You just need to position your car for the entry of turn number 2. Hubbets is down in 11th. And having a comfortable race so far. He's the third BMW in order in that field. Van Gisbergen into the pit lane. And let's find out if SVG, he won't remain in the lead for sure, but we'll find out how quick this pit stop will be for the OSR driver.
Yeah, well, this stop's going to need the tyres to go on. We saw him take 12 seconds for his first stop, and this obviously being a little bit longer. I think the big driver we need to keep an eye on here, Lattimore, as you see him go through early on, Lattimore does need to come down the lane again to just get fuel next time by. So it'll be interesting to see just how much of a gap Lattimore can open up. I think Craig Edwards still out front of this one, 6 seconds up the road, but he will also have to come down the lane for another stop tonight. So it's going to be very, very interesting between our top 3.
And a box for Danny Davison. Same for Dave Clements in the Mach 1 Esports Ferrari. There's Davison on screen. There's Van Gisbergen out and away here on iRacing. Now, you cannot make contact with other cars if you're new to iRacing and watching this broadcast. It's just part of the rules on iRacing. Now, the weird thing is, Daniel, did I miss it in build notes? Because the other week I was in a test session as we watch these drivers rejoin. Actually, this is more important now. This is Kenneth Latta actually behind. I thought that was a lapped car, but it's Kenneth Latta here behind Davison, critical for track position. Davison ends up ahead, so I'm not sure if that was calculated, but very critical towards Davison's race here for the win.
Yeah, Davison coming on really, really strong in the BMW, and it's great to see him be the lead BMW at the moment. Likewise, Ken Latta, the lead Ferrari. So both these guys pushing on exceptionally well, but they do, I think, have one more stop still left on the cards between them. But all in all, the racing between these two absolutely cracking right now. And with, like I say, 25 minutes to go, not much between them at all. Lap pace, only about 0.3 of a lap difference between their outright pace at the moment.
So very critical right now to find out where Craig Edwards will feel... oh, Jesus. Let me start again. Where Craig Edwards will feed out in the field. I'm never going to say those two words in a sentence ever again after that debacle. But Edwards is up in the first position. I saw someone dive into the box. It wasn't a leader. So that was just one of the cars down the back end of the order. Could have been Jason Dullahan in the Porsche, in that Pulse Racing Team Porsche, of course, in the 186 car. And there it is at the bottom of the screen, confirmed. It's in P29 for the moment. So now, in the closing stages of the race, what have we taken so far from this race, Daniel? What have we learnt so far from these, from the whole field and how to approach these endurance races? Because come next season, this is the last time we see this format, and there could be a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting watching the way the drivers have really gone about deciding when they want to take their pit stops. And I think we saw it, Coda and Le Mans, we probably saw it a little bit similar, where a lot of guys try and space out the stops reasonably spaced out between all three. So you get a pretty good run time on all of them. I think looking at what we've seen, though, it's a format that's proving extremely successful. We're seeing a lot of variety up throughout the leaderboard. Not only do we get the usual suspects up there, the likes of Craig Edwards, Lattimore and Wallace, it's allowing us to get a lot of the new talent focusing up there as well. So I think all in all, it's something we're probably going to take away from all of this is it's open for anyone to get up there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the drivers can still win in the closing stages of this campaign, let alone the race for the championship I'm talking about here. This is Stephen Bartholomew up on screen, who's going to hound one of his fellow forwards of Scott Gamble. Scott Gamble streams, of course. I always say that all the time. So definitely give Scott Gamble a follow. Check him out. Does a lot of iRacing streaming. Right now, I'm sure he wouldn't want to be watching. Who wouldn't want us to be watching this stream? Because he could be passed here by Bartholomew.
Yeah, Bartholomew coming on strong after that early spin in the first 10 minutes of the race down into turn 2. So he's getting back on underway now, just getting a move done into 10, not going to get it closed off. On the outside there, it's a hard one to come around and make a move, but he will get a nice exit, which will set him up well for the run down Casino straight in towards 13 and 14. And if anything, he's probably going to get this move done, but the Mark 1 Esport car, they're not going to make it easy for him at all.
Through the final corner, they scrap here. Bartholomew had such a good run. Probably had to back out of the gas a little bit. And who's that Porsche behind? That's Mr. Butler himself, who made that earlier pit stop just a couple of laps ago. Alongside each other are the two here. And, just running a bit too hot into turn 3. Opens the door for Jesse Butler on fresh rubber. I've never seen 3 wide into here, and rightly so. Gamble just backs out of it. Doesn't want any piece of that battle.
No, it's a really strong move there from Butler to push through. Up a couple of spots there, and not sure what happened to Gamble though in that Ford. He dropped off a lot of pace and potential slowdown as a result of that. So we'll keep an eye as that unfolds. But yeah, fantastic from Butler. Bartholomew not wanting to let go in that Ford though.
Yeah, really not sure where that slowdown would have occurred. There are the track temperature up on screen. So 28 degrees track temperature. We began this race an hour ago, about 23, 24. So that's certainly risen as the sun shines here. And it's currently almost 9 a.m. We're 5 minutes away from 9 a.m. local time in Montreal. And so that's why that track temp is going to increase ever so rapidly.
Yeah, the track temperature will go up, which will probably help the tyres just come on a little bit sooner, especially for those guys that still need their last tyre stop. But I think it's going to make the guys that come in early probably hurt just that little bit more than they really want.
So, leaders still yet to make their second pit stops. That includes Edwards, Lattimore, Wallace up in your top 3. And they're all in close contention for the championship. Now, this will be interesting to see. Can we flick up the championship standings again? That will be nice to see where these 3 place for all the viewers. So, Edwards, Lattimore, and Wallace, as we know, currently top 3 in this race. All 900 drivers. So here they are up on screen. There they are now. Now, they're not in order. Of course, Lattimore, our championship leader, is currently second in the race. Wallace is in third. He's third in the race, but it's Edwards and Lattimore who swap positions for the moment.
Yeah, these 3 have been virtually inseparable throughout the course of the season. You can see in the points only what do we got? 170 spread between the first three, so not much in it at all. I don't see Mr. Phoeben out here tonight, so he will drop down a little bit further in that fourth position. But for the guys up the top three, really coming on to expect what we've seen so far throughout this season. They're just pushing on as always.
Brilliant series. Get yourself involved. Visit the Aussie Mixed and Fixed website and join in on the series for all the action. But maybe if you don't want to join this season, get some testing in the GTEs and see what will happen for Season 10 in a few weeks' time. 2020 is coming, man. This year's flown by, let me tell you that, Daniel. Goodness.
Yeah, it's gone exceptionally quick. I think it's just one of those things. As you get older, the time goes a bit quicker. I remember being a young fella at school and going, oh, God, it's so long for 1 month to the next, and 1 day to the next. And you look at it now, it goes in the blink of an eye. It's ridiculous.
No, I don't think... I used to think it's because you got older, but I think, you know what? The busier you are, time flies. Or the more time you waste. I think either the busier you are or the more time you waste, time flies. If you start procrastinating or you have nothing to do, then time's really, really slow.
Yeah, definitely. And for the guys out here, they'll be wondering exactly where that time has gone, busy behind the wheel. And likewise for us, I can't believe we're already an hour and a half into this one tonight. But throughout the course of the year, it's been extremely fast for how quick it's gone on. And to find ourselves in November already, geez.
Yeah, well, Matt Morris is into the pit lane, and he's going to service that Porsche. So, see what the VMMR driver will feed out after his pit stop for sure. He was near the bottom end of the top 10 as he entered. So, what's your worst moment being on iRacing this year? What do you think you've wasted your time with the most? Because iRacing has a lot of good stuff, but there's always the bad we can talk about too.
Look, my waste was the Spa 24-hour race. Absolutely shocking. Threw away a lot of license points, and that was probably my big low light for the year on iRacing.
Well, you might be joined by 95% of drivers who ran that event. Thank goodness I didn't. And I don't have to deal with that. I don't think... I was tempted this year to make my endurance debut as we see Stephen Lattimore into the pit lane. But I'll tell you what, I'm glad I didn't at Spa because I would have lost. I think I would have been banned from iRacing considering how many instant points I would have lost.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I'm somewhat surprised I maybe didn't get as much time off as I should have. But no, look, it was, as much as it's a great series, it is a very technical track, and I think some of those issues that we did have in that race, won't go into detail about them. I'm sure everyone's well versed in what happened there. It opened it up where there was a lot of exploits being taken. So not the best race, and certainly not one that I enjoyed. I think probably Le Mans was my favourite up until our going to bed at 4 a.m. here, local time in Australia, and then coming back at 6 to find no car in the race.
Oh, goodness, that's demoralising. So we just saw Lattimore make his pit stop. Now he's fed out right behind Van Gisbergen here. So we're watching Kenneth Ladder on screen. All over the rear end here is Darren Lobb. He's under attack after his earlier spin. And Darren Lobb making amends for what could have and should have been a race win for himself. And he's Darren Lobb. I tell you what, he's learnt a lesson from Shane Van Gisbergen. Forces a very similar error to Kenneth Ladder.
Yeah, that's a great push there from Lobb. Didn't know contact on the back there, just got up and applied a lot of pressure there. So he's moving forward. We'll see him get through turn 9 successfully now after that spin. Remember, that's where he did loop that car, but he's pushing on nicely now, sitting up in the 6th position. So a lot of position gain. He's got Danny Davison just ahead of him, and then up to Steve Lattimore. So certainly a lot of time left in this race for him to get back up towards the pointy end.
So my waste of time this year on iRacing, there were a lot of good memories, but was the 2 days I spent testing the F3 on V6 tires, knowing that the update was going to go to V7, and my lap times were so good in the same conditions as the season that just passed. I think I was like 2 or 3 tenths off Freddie Euchster, like one of the quickest sim races ever. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to gain like 3,000 iRating this week. Then we updated to V7, and I don't know. I'm going to put all that effort back in again. But I literally did so much testing, man. And then I reckon it was just dumb by me knowing that the car was going to be updated anyway 2 days later.
Yeah, it's one of those hard ones. You get into a good rhythm, you kind of forget about those little changes that are coming. And I think you even find you slip into a bit of a false sense where you worry, when is the next update coming? You almost forget about it, to be honest. And then you go and as you say, do a bucket load of laps for it almost to be worth nothing. But hey, it's still good familiarisation with the car, and no doubt something that you need, especially in the way iRacing's moving forward.
Yeah, most certainly. This is Matt Morris up on screen. Morris in that VMMR Porsche. Made his second pit stop already, has Morris. So we'll be hoping to pick off the cars ahead out there on the racetrack. We've seen better events from Morris in the past. But all eyes will be on Craig Edwards and Justin Wallace, because there is less than 15 minutes remaining in this endurance race here from the circuit Gilles-Villeneuve. There is Mr. Wallace up on screen, and he's going to make his final pit stop. Definitely not this lap, but it will have to be sometime soon. And do you think you'll leave it till as late as possible?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in as late as possible, depending on where he is in the pit lane. He could almost see a Michael Schumacher effort there and come in right on the last lap and then cross the line. So we'll keep an eye on that. It's certainly an option out there for him, depending on where he is. But right now he's got one of the Ferraris behind him there for DPR Racing, and he's going to want to keep an eye on that time. 14 minutes on the clock, not much left to get this final stop done and dusted.
Yeah, unless race controls flicked up a penalty on screen, I don't expect him to box on the final lap. That late 90s British Grand Prix was just awesome. Someone's put it up on YouTube. It won't be up for long, let me tell you that much. But while it's up there, go have a look at that one. It's a thrilling event in the motor racing past. Now, in this car, if you are Edwards or Wallace and you want to run the car light, Daniel, does that mean... Because remember in the V8, you wouldn't want to run the car too light because sometimes the fuel keeps the supercar planted. But maybe in this car, less fuel will make the car quicker, so you won't want to dive in. I'll tell you what a waste of time that was. Wallace dives in anyway, and that could be a speeding penalty.
Yeah, he came in with a lot of gusto on there. Van Gisbergen will get a move done, and he'll drop himself up into second now, as you see a change on the timing boards there. And we'll keep an eye to see where Wallace falls out. But yeah, he came in with a lot of speed underneath that Porsche.
It's a longer pit lane than the real world here, normally at Montreal. You can see the entry's a little bit earlier than usual, and the exit runs very deep. So for Wallace, it's a quick pit stop, but he's not even going to be in the top 5 at the moment. So issues for him. Now for Justin Ruggia, we're expecting Ruggia to be a lot higher up there. He's only in 15th, but Wallace now will be alongside. This is Neil Pearson for track position. Oh, there's a bit of argy-bargy going on here between the two. Slight bit of contact. And tell you what, Robbins Racing boys love to see this kind of stuff. Still alongside each other here through the first sector. Oh, no one's giving an inch so far. It looks like Pearson's going to retain 6th. Brilliant fight by the two of them.
Yeah, that's hugely impressive there from Pearson. Gave just enough room for Justin Wallace there not to put either one of those two in a wall, and just held firm around the outside, retains that spot. Up into 5th place now, Wallace down into 6th, so absolutely nothing between these two. And Wallace probably going to be in the spot with a little bit extra fuel as we see Pearson run wide, and that will be a slowdown. So that, unfortunately, will reverse those positions.
Oh, no, all that hard work undone. And Neil Pearson back down to 7th here, down 2 spots from his starting position. How about Mr. Cozzi down there, up 22 positions? But for Van Gisbergen, up a few spots from his 5th position, of course. He's in prime position to win this race. It needs to be a quick pit stop for Edwards. Now, Van Gisbergen went purple in terms of lap time a few laps ago at 31.1. He's just gone purple in the final sector. And he's got a lot of traffic up ahead of him. He's just disposed of some traffic. So Van Gisbergen right now, a 29-second advantage. It's going to be awfully close between him and Edwards for the win.
Yeah, not much between either of these two. We're seeing, on average, you can get down the lane in about 30 seconds. So depending on where we see Edwards fall out and what he's got to do, whether it's tyres or just fuel, this is going to be extremely tough.
So when will Craig Edwards enter the box? He's at the back straight. You can see on the track map that purple number 1. And I thought he dived in. He did dive in for a second. I was going to say that number was just screaming around that track map like a Scalextrics. And Edwards right now will make a pit stop. This will define who will win this race.
Yeah, he's going to be really carefully get in on the marks. Doesn't want to have a stop where he's got to reverse it up or come up short. So we'll keep an eye on this. You can see on the map, Van Gisbergen just about entering into turns 13 and 14. As we see Edwards pull to a stop, so nice work there. But I think, looking at this, Van Gisbergen will get this one done.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure.
Let's go, Craig. Let's go. He's out of the box. Go, go, go. Get out there. And he's exited. He's off the pit limiter. Oh, he's going to end up in the lead. That's how quick that stop was for Edwards. Critical for our Fusion Sim Racing Ford. And it's a Ford 1, 2, 3, all different teams, but Edwards won't be worrying about that. He's got a 2.5 second gap to manage now on Van Gisbergen to close this race.
That was a fantastic run there from Edwards. I made a meal of that, calling Van Gisbergen around there, but no, fantastic stop by Edwards. 6.6 seconds. That was hugely fast there, and I think quicker than anything we've seen from any of the guys coming down for just fuel only so far tonight.
You know, I don't blame you, Daniel, because as I said, the pit lane exit here is just so short and uncanny. It's very weird in comparison to most other pit lanes. The worst pit lane entry in the world, Korea, Yongham, but we've established that. But apart from that, the exit here at Montreal is very unique. Here's Matt Morris up on screen. He's trying to dispose of what looks like Jeremy Clark in the Riot Sim Racing car up ahead of him. So we're hoping to do that sometime soon. Now, if you're Van Gisbergen, the gap's already 2.3 seconds. You'll want to hunt down Craig Edwards, Daniel, and you'll want to pack the pressure on him the same way you did on Darren Lobb earlier in the event.
Oh, for sure. I think this is really going to be a telling moment for Edwards, just to see how cool, calm and collected he is, having the pressure applied to him by someone of Van Gisbergen's talent. So that gap's still retaining to drop. 2.2 seconds, just ticked down to 2.1. So Van Gisbergen is coming at him hard for these final 8 minutes of the race. And if anything, Edwards is going to have his hands full holding on to that first position.
Morris is sniffing here. He's sniffing that top 15 spot. And the outside can work. You'll just have to lunge it pretty deep here. You'll have to squeeze Jeremy Clark up the inside. Doesn't worry about that at all, does Matt Morris. He's going to be focused on his right foot and the exit. But if you make that pass too early, you have to break the toe, and Morris has the IQ to recognize that.
Yeah, I think Morris will just park that car just a foot wider than normal for racing line, just to make it a little bit harder there. He actually doesn't even need to do that. He's got a huge run off turn 10. That's fantastic. Sets himself up, gets a bit of air both sides through 13 and 14. And the Porsche going well.
Goodness me. That's normally a broken suspension, mate. These cars are quite tough.
Yeah, they build them strong now in the GTEs. We see Danny Davison. He's got Darren Loeb all over the back of him. This battle for fourth and fifth. Loeb down the inside. Nice pass. Runs him a little wide. That's cheeky of Loeb. Just gets that move held off and moves up to fourth.
And that's a sexy livery on Darren Loeb's car. So brilliant to see that Ferrari out there racing quite well. For retro round, like we said, for the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series. Now we're coming towards the closing stages of this race. Look at the lap times on the left-hand side of the screen. Van Gisbergen just under a tenth quicker than Edwards. That's not going to be enough here to win this race.
No, but they do have a little bit of lap traffic. I'm just keeping an eye on where they are. Our next round of cars to get through are down in 6 and 7. Edwards just working through 5 now, so a little bit of track ahead of him. Before he gets up, no doubt that finger will be all over the light flash, getting those guys out of the way, and the blue flags respectively going to be flowing. So we'll keep an eye on that. But Gisbergen pushing on last time by, what was he, a 1:31.62 versus Edwards 1:31.69. So absolutely nothing between them.
Yeah, this is going to be a close finish to this race with just under 6 minutes to go. So there's the track map up on screen. There's the number one highlighted and outlined in fluoro green, as you can see. There's Van Gisbergen in shot. The gap 1.7 seconds now in the hairpin. So Van Gisbergen looking strong, and he's very strong in the final sector, as we know. So a lot of straight line speed. These cars are fixed setup, so he's not going to do anything with setup there. He could just be getting on the right foot quite early, and that could be helping him. But now into this final corner, the driver makes the difference here, Daniel. I've learned over my experience in sim racing, and this being my favorite track, It is the driver that makes the difference through that final chicane 99% of the time.
Yeah, it's probably, if anything, the most critical spot on this circuit. It's very easy to make a meal of it, and for the guys that are able to do it consistently, what we're seeing from Edwards and Van Gisbergen, there's a huge amount of time to be gained in doing.
Yeah, so there is Edwards now having to defend from Van Gisbergen. Now, remember, Kazuki Umeshima was very quick here in Grand Prix Series racing. You can be quick in terms of setup. I think he coined the term, he didn't coin it, but everybody started calling this certain setting on the Williams Umeshima dampers, because he was the only driver, Daniel, that just managed to throw the car into that final corner and it somehow just stuck. And this was an open wheeler we're talking about, not a GTE.
Yeah, there's a lot more talented guys out in there that can make these setups work than I am, and hats off to them. If they can get it done, especially in an open wheel car, you can gain a massive amount of time through there over everyone else. But right now, Edwards still holding on down through the little kink at 11. Wouldn't even call this a corner, but it is. And down on Casino Straight again, Van Gisbergen still managing to close down that gap to first, 1.3 seconds right now.
At the casino, only to the right-hand side here at Montreal. Very wonderfully designed building. If you've ever been there, it's Montreal's one of the best cities in the world for sure. And this circuit is just awesome. Even replicated in iRacing is the Salute Gilles around, right on the start-finish line. It's pretty much etched into the racetrack, onto the tarmac. But the gap right now, 10th.5 quicker was Van Gisbergen last time round. Tell you what, I reckon he can do it. I think with looking at the way he's positioning that car right now, he's certainly got the power to do it. I think Van Gisbergen last time by a 10th and a bit quicker, so hats off to him, still pushing hard, but we're getting close to that lap traffic. You can just see it in the top of frame now. Those guys will really need to be aware of what's coming up behind them, and they're not going to want to be the cause of interference for the remainder of this race with just on 3 minutes to go. So what are we, 2 and a bit laps, I dare say, to finish this one out. Yep, so Pat Gallo makes his second and final pit stop for the day. We see Kenneth Ladder in the pit lane. We saw Danny Davison enter the box just a few laps ago. Davison actually made his third pit stop of the day. It's listed on my timing screen at least, so we'll confirm that nevertheless. But Davison now back in a 14th as we see Gallo and Ladder drop down the order on the left-hand side of the screen. That's a depressing sight to see here in the closing stages of this race. But this is an exciting sight to see. Over the Casino Straight one more time. There's the long river that was once used for the Olympic Games here at Montreal. And Edwards has to throw it over that final chicane. Oh, I think I saw Van Gisbergen in the wall. That was very close.
Yeah, these two are pushing exceptionally hard to finish this one off. And got that little bit of traffic, so neither one are going to want to give anything up here. No one's going to throw it all out on the table to see what they've got. That couple of cars ahead, going to need to be cautious, but Gisbergen going for everything that he's got right now. See one of the Mark 1 cars pulling off. Might ride on board here with Gisbergen, just get an idea of how hard he's pushing this Ford around the circuit.
Oh, goodness. I thought he spun there. He's lost 9/10 of a second, almost a second now with that mistake. Did the lap traffic just distract him a little bit?
Yeah, I think that might have just been a small distraction there. The gap opened up 1.8 seconds now. Closing down again, I think a little slower for Edwards through turn 9 and continue on here, run up into 10.
Oh, no, without that mistake, what could have been for Shane Van Gisbergen. It was going to be tough anyway, so he won't be kicking himself too much, but we know he's a racer. He's a pure racer as SVG, and whether it's sim racing or real racing, a win is a win. Right now, he's got this final chicane to maneuver around. Awfully close to the wall yet again. He looked a bit safer compared to last lap. So after the mistake, he's gained half a second. That's remarkable.
Yeah, he's really in good stead with this Ford right now. See him bouncing over the curb. So he's down to turn 2, leaves him 12 more opportunities around this circuit to get a move done. Looks like we're going to just be dropping it on our final lap now. About 30 seconds to go before we hit race end here. So he's got a couple more spots to get through that gap, down to 1.3 seconds, and he's exceptionally fast through that back portion of the circuit from about turn 8 down through to 14. So Edwards going to have to be very, very cautious of that.
As our American audience would say, the white flag waves, and this is confirmed. The final lap of the race. We've had 56 of them here from Montreal, and they've been 56 good ones. Bit of a mistake from Van Gisbergen on the penultimate lap. Cost him an opportunity at the lead. I think without that mistake, he would have been about a couple of tenths behind here heading into that final corner. Now, remember what happened to Marcus Ambrose here versus Carl Edwards, not Craig Edwards. And this was in the Nationwide Series race in 2009. Ambrose made one mistake all day, lost it in the final corners, and Edwards took the victory in this final chicane. But it'll be the other way around for Van Gisbergen today. He made the error behind, and he will essentially hand the victory indirectly to this man. Fusion Sim Racing and the Ford of Craig Edwards wins from Montreal and takes a brilliant victory for our final endurance event for the season of the Aussie Mixed and Fixed GT Series.
Steve Lattimore will come home third for Race on Oz. It's a Ford 1, 2, 3. That's a great result from that manufacturer there. A couple of guys getting home in the Mach 1 Esport cars of Dave Clements, Lee Vandenberg coming along just ahead of them. Another one of the Mark 1 cars in Chad Hearn as well. So these guys coming home in 8th, 9th and 10th. Nice little photo finish for those guys.
Yeah. Oh, what's going on here on the final lap between the Mach 1 Esports boys? Bit of fun here. So 7th, 8th and 9th for Hearn, Clements, Vandenberg at the end of the day. For Darren Lobb, it'll be a race to forget for sure. Brilliant 4th position for him in the DPR Racing Ferrari, the highest placed non-Ford, but he'll be trying to forget what could have been in terms of a race win had he not had that earlier spin about half an hour ago. Danny Davison, after a late stop, will come home now in 14th. That's confirmed at the end of the day, but what a race it's been, Daniel, from Craig Edwards. Critical for the championship.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic run from Edwards. He's done everything he needed to do to continue to build on his points throughout the championship, and it's only going to help solidify his chance for getting a good run at the Cup at the end of the season.
And we are forgetting, or at least I am, that he did start this race from pole, so it's no surprise that Edwards did win this one, and just dominated, didn't he?
Yeah, very much in control. Had a great run early on there against Loeb, and those guys put on a fantastic fight, but to hold off the talent and caliber of someone like Van Gisbergen at the end of the race, it's absolute feather in the cap for him, and much credit should be shared for everything he's done in doing so. So another fantastic result for him.
And for Shane Van Gisbergen and Justin Ruggiero, it's great to see the real world get involved in the virtual world. It'll be something that we hope to see more of in the 2 closing rounds this season at Sebring and Silverstone, and hopefully for season 10.
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be great to have the likes of some more real-world races on there. I know we do get it from time to time, and have a few guys that do race traditionally, and we see them out in this series. But to have someone of the caliber of Van Gisbergen and Ruggiero out there again, we'll stick to continue that on moving forward through season number 10.
So let's have a look at our final race results for Week 10, Season 9. Fusion Sim Racing's Craig Edwards wins by just under a second from Shane Van Gisbergen. It felt like a lot closer of a finish had Van Gisbergen not made that mistake. We will have to leave that up to your imagination to find out who would have won that event. It would have been a dead heat heading to that final corner. But at the end of the day, that's how they classified. Edwards with the victory, Van Gisbergen with the podium, and Lattimore, again critical for the championship, finishes ahead of Justin Wallace. But not good for his championship lead for Lattimore as Edwards snatches that victory. For Darren Lobb, again, what could have been for him? Use your imagination. Had he not had that spin, would he have won this race in P number 1? He finished just ahead of Race on Oz's Justin Wallace. Then we had DPR Racing's Neil Pearson in 6th. Brilliant fight at the end of the closing stages of that race with Neil Pearson. 3 Mach 1 Esports cars there, rounding out the top 10 along with Jason Cozzi. Jason Cosby made up an immense amount of positions this event. And good to see Justin Arruggia with brilliant strategy for that early stop. Had a good, consistent race. Didn't see much of him in terms of on-track action, but at the end of the day, ended up in 11th, just ahead of Matt Morris. Danny Davison with a late stop cost himself a lot of time, and not sure why he took that stop. It was listed as his third, so it'll be interesting to find out the news on what happened to Danny Davison, but we'll cycle through the rest of the results. And you can see some other notable names down the order. Damon Mulqueen in 25th, not where we usually see Damon Mulqueen. We cycle through the rest of the field there. We had 40 cars taking to this race. Now, some of them were race control and the safety car, so we actually 38. Timothy Phoeben listed as racing, Daniel, but we didn't. Did he DNF? Because as far as I know, I didn't think he was racing at all.
No, I do see the name on the board, but we didn't see any laps from Tim, unfortunately. But little unfortunate.
Yeah, so I'm a bit confused by that too. So there's the Mach 1 Esports driver who was fifth in the championship. Don't forget, for that pro class, didn't really set a lap time in this race. So we're interested to find out what happened to him. For Adam Gardner, not the best of events. He probably could have finished inside the top 15 had he not had an earlier incident. So now it's time for post-race interviews.
Too bad a car.
And we will drag in Fredo, who was just mid-conversation there with Stephen Lattimore. But Fredo, welcome to Victory Lane. We can call it here because we're being North American, aren't we, at Montreal? And it's a victory that you ever so need, that's ever so critical for the championship. Well done.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, absolutely. Big shot in the arm for the championship. I thought I was going to get a nice bag of points last week, but it all sort of came apart for me about halfway through the second sprint. So it was good to actually clench one tonight under some pretty heavy pressure at the end there too.
Yeah, a lot of pressure from SVG. And he made a mistake with the lapped car there. Did that distract you heading into turns 5 and 6?
It gave me the resolve that he wasn't going to get me. I was starting to feel the pinch up until that point, and yeah, when I saw the time blow out slightly, I was like, oh, yep, 2 laps, I can do it.
Well, were you aware that SVG put the pressure on Darren Lobb, and that's what forced Darren Lobb into a spin? There was no contact. It was just Darren was just having a push to stay ahead of him. So we were thinking that he was going to do the same to you, but you didn't crack under pressure.
Yeah, I didn't think I was going to be able to hold him off when I came out of the pits because the gap was so small, and I think he was on fresher tyres. I think he took tyres at the second stop. You have to confirm that for me.
But SVG or somebody else?
Yeah, Shane.
I'm pretty sure, Daniel. No, it was the first stop.
Oh, okay. Well, he hung on to his tyres very well because he was running some pretty serious laps there. I saw an undercut happening. So when I pitted and came out just in front of him, I was quite concerned that he'd still have the pace to come at me. But I managed to just stem the bleeding just enough to get home, so I'm pretty happy with it.
And excuse me, sorry, I thought I had a technical issue there. And for yourself as well, heading into next round for Sebring and Silverstone, I don't know, for me, Montreal suits the aggressive driver, I feel. A driver that throws it into corners, very aggressive on the brake and throttle pedal. It's a stop-start circuit. Can your driving style translate to Sebring or Silverstone and work there too?
Yep, Silverstone is probably my best track. I really love the high-speed corners. And Sebring, there's a couple of corners that suit the Ford. So I think I should be pretty competitive at both of those.
And can I correct myself too? He did take tyres on the second stop. Because I was going to say, how was he so quick towards the end of the race? So don't be too scared there, Craig. He did take tyres on that second stop, which is why he had some brilliant pace. But who gets it done for you in that Fusion Sim Racing Ford?
Oh, yeah, huge big thanks to the rest of the team at Fusion Sim Racing. Carter plastering, dripping paint graphics, and Eclipse signage. And I just wanted to say a big props to AMF, how far it's come from being a GT dev series to now tonight attracting big name drivers to come and
Yeah, awesome. We were talking about that earlier on, and that was Craig Edwards, our winner from today's event, critical for the championship. And Daniel, that's what we discussed, remember, earlier in the race, how AMF has just grown into what it is so far, and we hope it grows into even bigger things for 2020.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the series has come on absolute leaps and bounds from its early roots. It's come a long way, and I think the transition the guys had from development series to the GT series they're doing now has really helped that, and continuing on even further going forward. And I think, as you say, with the content or the talent coming into the race, going to be forever benefit from that. Also in the box now we have Steve Lattimore, come home third tonight. Steve, another great race for yourself, mate, and really starting to accumulate those points for the Race on Oz boys.
Cheers, fellas. Yeah, good race there. Shane put a bit of pressure on me at the first. I just tried to let him go, but he got a slow down at the War Champions, and I got back in front, and then we had the little bingle into the hairpin. But Shane Van Gisberg, you can't hold up him too long. You'll make his way past you. But then it was just trying to maintain the gap to Danny and the other driver, 999. I can't think of his name at the moment. But it was a really good race.
Yeah, well, we saw yourself and Shane having a really good scrap early on. We noticed a few passes back and forward. And was there anywhere particularly you found you were maybe a little bit quicker than he was, and vice versa, where he was a touch quicker than yourself?
Through the first sector, he was really fast. Turn 1 and 2. I could make a tenth back on him through the second chicane, I'd say, and then he'd make it back up on the hairpin. He's pulling that thing up quite easily compared to what I was.
Yeah, well, that's something we did those throughout the final portion of the race, especially as he started challenging up towards Craig Earl. He seemed exceptionally strong from about sort of turn 8 down through to 14 for the last half of the lap. But all in all, mate, for yourself, come home third again around the calibre of drivers that are up in the series. Another fantastic run for yourselves. And again, for Race on Oz, you guys all up and down through the ladder as we've come to sort of expect. But next week we move on off to Sebring. You're looking forward to that? And is there anything that you might look to do a little bit different to what we would have seen out here tonight?
Well, from last season at Sebring, I had a lot of pace there. Sadly, I made a mistake into turn 1 and Justin ran away with the win. He'll be in the car that he's more suited to this time around, so he's going to be quite hard to beat there. But that's good points for the team. But I'm fighting Craig for a championship at the moment, and hopefully won't have to put any team orders in, especially if there's a safety car. Van Gisberg can show up again for that one. You'll know all about that.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Well, look, before we let you go and enjoy what was a fantastic race for yourself and Race on Oz, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out and a thanks to?
Yeah, to Harvey Bay Autoglass, Race on Oz, all the boys over at the forum, all the guys that race with us on iRacing, the guys who took part in Scops tonight, done quite well in second split. Top 5 finish, one of our drivers, and 2 of them got into the top 10. It was quite a good night for the Race on Oz boys over a few different classes or series. And to AMF for putting it on, and Apex Racing TV for hosting it. Broadcasting it.
No, that's all good, mate. Look, from all of us here, congratulations again. Third place tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing you back out on track again for Sebring next week.
Cheers, fellas.
So there was the brilliant Stephen Lattimore, who is in that championship fight, which will head down to Sebring next week, Daniel, a track that's ever so bumpy. And it's a track that, I mean, how do you describe Sebring? It's got a very unique first sector, and then you've got that long sunset bend to end the lap, which has, I think, 1,000 different lines you can take, and none of them are wrong.
Yeah, well, I kind of think of Sebring as like the grandfather of American racing. It's been around forever and a day. As you say, it's a track that is completely different to a lot of what we've seen throughout the calendar this season. Very bumpy in a lot of spots. Sunset Bend, that final corner, as you say, multiple lines, a corner that's really, really technically challenging. It doesn't look it on paper when you see it just as a 180 sweeper, but the way you can get through there and how hard you can brake and where you turn in, absolutely critical to completing off a final lap. That said, though, there's a huge difference in variety of track. You go from smooth to rough tarmac and concrete. It's a track that really just throws it up for everything.
And that event will be on the 24th of November. We return back to our 45-minute format for the final 2 races. The final round will take place from Silverstone in a fortnight's time, so don't miss that. That will be on the 1st of December, but as we said, all focus on Sebring and back to that brilliant 45-minute format, which will be broadcasted on Apex Racing TV. You can catch all the action on our associated platforms. Visit the Apex Racing TV website for more information and visit iRacing.com to grab yourself a subscription. And then go and visit the third website, the AMF website, and go and join in on the league. And you can be a participant in the action that you saw today. From myself, Jonathan Simon, Daniel Lead alongside me, Scott Newton, our brilliant producer behind the scenes, and from our entire Apex Racing TV crew, we will say so long from the virtual Circuit Gilles-Villeneuve, and we'll see you in a week's time back in the USA. All right. I can't do it. I can't sing it, Daniel. You can laugh at me afterwards. We'll see you in Florida virtually.